Welcome to Galaxy Brains.
An infinite amount of cash.
I'm your host, Alex Thorn.
The U.S. banking system is sound and resilient.
Bitcoin made a new all-time high.
If you're not long, you're short.
Satoshi's going to come on there, laugh hysterically, go quiet. All Bitcoin's going to be erased.
Bitcoin's the best crypto out there.
Bitcoin is going to zero.
Welcome back to Galaxy Brains. As always, I'm your host, Alex Thorn, head of firm-wide research at Galaxy. Bitcoin not zero, and we have a great episode for you today. Peter McCormack, chair of Real Bedford FC, is our guest. He is back. Pete is out of the world of Bitcoin mostly now. He's given up what Bitcoin did, and he is rebuilding Bedford and the UK. We'll talk with Pete about a whole bunch of interesting stuff and about politics. We'll also check with our good friend Bimnet Abebe from Galaxy Trading, as always, to talk about markets. And before we get to all of that, I need to remind you to please refer to the link to the disclaimer in the podcast notes and note that none of the information in this podcast constitutes investment advice or an offer, recommendation, or solicitation by Galaxy or any of its affiliates to buy or sell any securities. We got a great episode here. It's a little bit long, but it's worth it, so let's hop right into it. Let's go now to our friend Beimnet Abebe from Galaxy Trading. As always, Bimnet, welcome back to Galaxy Brains.
Thank you for having me.
So we got CPI, we got some China tariff news, and we got markets grinding higher. I don't know, maybe start us with the CPI. What are we seeing?
Yeah, so we saw a downward miss on CPI, came in at 0.1 month on month for core CPI. The weakness was driven by housing, owner's equivalent rent and shelter prices moving less high than expected. Okay. So they're
still growing.
At the figures came in at 0.3% month on month. They've been normally around 0.4. And what's really encouraging about that is normally these shelter figures lag like the real world data. So back when rents were rising like crazy, you weren't seeing the owner's equivalent rent ticking up, and people were like, no, have you seen rents? Like, they're going up. But it's just because of how, structurally the figures are calculated. And so there's typically like a lead lag situation. And so the weakness you're seeing here in the CPI print was actually in the market like months ago.
I see.
Right. And so we've seen continued downward pressure in rents in some of the high frequency data, or like less upward pressure. So going up at a smaller rate, basically. And that's a function of like just, new home construction or new apartment construction coming into the market, as well as just demand kind of, falling a bit lower. And so it's a good reading, and it has good implications for inflation figures on a go forward. Some of the other surprises were things like airline fares that typically on a seasonal basis are normally pretty strong for the month of May, but they actually came in weaker by like 2.4%. We're seeing weakness in apparel prices. Generally, like since, oil prices have also come down, not that they're relevant for these figures in any meaningful way, but like, gas prices are pretty reasonable. The Fed is getting closer to their inflation target. And the reaction you've had in the market in terms of, interest rate pricing, honestly, has been relatively subdued. You've seen about an extra, call it, 4 to 6 basis points of additional cuts priced in. And so I think by December, you're right around like a 47 bips in cuts ballpark, which is just 2, right? And
225 basis point cuts.
Correct.
Right.
And so the market's not like, oh shit, like we're going to be cutting super aggressively soon because inflation figures have come down. But there is a genuine like case to be made that, inflation's down. And so maybe you can, ratchet down how high interest rates are.
Well, and the president, and I saw today the vice president, this was maybe the first time I've seen J.D. Vance weigh on this. They're calling for lower rates, and the president is talking about like naming a successor.
Yes,
J.D. Vance called high rates. What did he say? Monetary malfeasance. He said was the quote.
Yeah,
today.
I'd like to see both of their economics degrees, but
but the fact remains, right? Political pressure for lower rates is also mounting.
Political pressure is mounting, and what's significant about the fact that Trump is thinking about a new Fed candidate is
because Jay Powell is out next spring,
May
2026.
Okay, so there's a long ways away, and normally like you want the current Fed chairman to stay credible Right. And like
Of course.
the whole basically U.S. economy and financial markets and monetary systems are built upon confidence
Yes.
in the government to do the right things and the central bankers to respond accordingly. And so, I'm not necessarily a big fan of undermining like an existing Fed chair, but the points are valid,
Right.
right?
Right.
And
They may be able to cut. Maybe it
they
should be lower.
could if they cut 50 basis points tomorrow,
It
like
wouldn't be a shock.
it would be a shock to relative to market pricing, but
Right.
could they justify it?
Right.
And people be like, "You're not crazy for doing it." Yes.
Yeah.
And my personal thesis is you're probably going to see a slowdown in the economic data. Call it mid-July, August area. I think a couple of things driving that is weakness in the housing market. There's a ton of homes up for sale. I think the consumer, particularly on the lower end of the income spectrum, is struggling pretty meaningfully. You've had the student loan repayments start as well. That impacts call it 11 to 18 million U.S. Folks. And so, and you just anecdotally from, what you're getting in terms of corporate feedback on earnings reports, like Family Dollar was highlighting the fact that they're getting a lot of 100K plus income people. Like Lululemon had one of its worst down days in history a couple weeks ago, like down 20+% because people aren't buying yoga pants that are absurd. And so I do think that there's also, I was talking to my Uber driver, again, let's take it for what you will, but he's like, I haven't seen any European tourists in New York. And so like there are things at the edges that, are somewhat concerning.
Yeah.
And you've also had a pretty big uptick in initial, not a big uptick, but a reasonable uptick in initial jobless claims. And, although NFP was hot, right? Well, it came in at 175. Like the real figures, like ADP, were really soft. They only saw 35,000 jobs added.
NFP gets adjusted all the time.
And to give you an idea, in 2024, the average adjustment was by 75,000 jobs lower.
Wow.
Right. And so, you might have gotten 175,000 job print on Friday, but maybe it's 100.
Right.
Right.
That would be normal.
That would be normal. And what does that actually mean? Because if we think the labor market's weakening, right? And these reports are constantly overstating it, and you're really moving lower into, levels where, the employment market's becoming more unbalanced. Then that is a little bit of cause for concern, right? And so, again, I think the Fed cut pricing probably has room to go.
Yeah.
Particularly if you do get the slowdown in data in, kind of July, August.
So I know they don't say this, and they certainly haven't said it, but is there an amount of the fact that they haven't cut yet, the Fed, that is them trying to resist the pressure from the executive branch to be seen as resisting it to help maintain Fed independence and credibility? Because if you have attacking Jay Powell is practically one of Trump's national pastimes. I mean, he did it the whole first administration also, right? And so, to have these overt attacks on the Fed's monetary policy in the press and then cut, would it maybe be seen as capitulating to political pressure? And is there
I don't
sense
know.
as a Fed
I
watcher?
don't think that Powell cares about his political perception.
But he might care about the Feds, right?
But he does care about the
Yeah.
Feds, and so every statement he's given like a response that's the fewest words possible and has focused strictly on the data. And he's given a very thorough rationale as to why they are choosing not to cut. And you also have to remember he did cut 100 basis points already.
That's true. He did.
Right, and so we've moved down a lot. And the question is, can we move down like a little bit further? And given the economic data growth being okay, even with these inflation figures coming in soft, core PCE is still above 2%. You're talking, I think core PCE last was 2.5%. So you're still 50 bips above your core PCE target. And so to start cutting in advance of you getting to that target, requires a significant burden of proof.
Right.
Right. And so I just don't think he's had it yet. And nobody knows, like, once these tariffs are consistently applied for a long period of time, will there be upward price pressure on goods and services? Like, that's still TBD. And so high level, like, I understand that angle, and I understand why Powell might want to fight that perception, but I don't think he is. And I think he's staying true to the independence of the Fed.
So just since, let's talk about the markets a little bit here, because Bitcoin's trading at 110K. In April, I think Liberation Day, around then, Bitcoin traded as low as 74,420. It's up 46% since April. Now, granted, it was more of like a V-shaped recovery, right, in markets. Stocks are up.
Yeah, they are.
They are kind of grinding higher, right? And we may have this deal on the U.S. and China tariffs. May still be big tariffs, but I feel like the uncertainty, if it is a deal between the U.S. and China, should also be supportive for markets, right? I mean, what do you feel?
No, I mean, I think there's a lot of optimism baked into a China deal already. So, like,
Right.
I think the upside on good tariff news is kind of limited.
Diminished now, yeah.
Yeah, what you've seen happen, though, since the bottom of the market is, everybody took their positioning down to, like, the bottom decile percentile.
Yeah.
Right? And then we started to bounce.
But retail probably bought this
Retail
So they loved this dip.
loved it, right? And so essentially what you had happen since the dip is those guys, like, that were short or underpositioned as the market started to go up, they felt the need to chase. They start chasing a little bit. Vol moves lower. That brings in, systematic buyers as vol moves lower. The market goes up. Folks that are underweight and short feel the need to buy more. They buy more. Vol goes lower. Systematic types go up, and then the corporate buybacks and earnings are okay. And so you've had this, like, snowball effect. And it's a very interesting concept because, as stock market starts to do a bit better, people start feeling better and think that things are good, and
Maybe
so
they
they feel
spend
more
more.
comfortable spending and buying more stocks. And so it's really this concept of reflexivity, which I
It's
think
like a virtuous cycle.
cycle. And George Soros has done a lot of work on it, and he's probably the main markets person that gets credit for it. But it is that in effect. But what folks have to keep in mind is reflexivity works in both directions, right? And so if you do have something that causes a bit of a turn, right, it starts to turn the other way. Okay, spot goes lower, people start feeling worse, so they take their positions down. Vol goes higher, folks are caused to de-risk, right?
Yep.
And so the cycle works in both directions, and you've had the upward kind of move, and now you're getting to the point where most reasonable estimates for where the S&P is going to end up on the year are only marginally higher than here. Like, I think street-wide expectations are call it anywhere from like 6,100 to like 6,400. And we're at like 60-50 or 60-60 right now, right? And so, like, you're not talking about a huge rally. You're talking about sub 10% rally as kind of the most optimistic kind of street-wide expectation. So, from a risk-reward perspective, like, you're kind of, it's not a great place to kind of be long. But again, if you're forced to be invested, like, it's probably reasonably safe.
And I mean, I'm looking at the S&P here right now. I mean, we're just a hair away from all-time highs, right? I mean, we're a couple percent, maybe.
Yeah.
Which markets just want to go higher. I mean, there aren't that many good places to invest your money, right?
Yeah,
Outside of the United States.
But again, like, I think folks in the U.S. are, like, so obsessed with the S&P level.
Yeah.
Like, think about the S&P in euro terms this year. Euro on this CPI print is approaching 115.
Wow.
Right?
We got down to like
104, 103.
Wow, I see. I see.
Like, on a FX adjusted basis, right? Like, stocks are 10% worse. Like, even if the S&P is unchanged in dollar terms, right? Like, the world is saying we don't want dollars right now. And that's for various reasons. But there's a big structural de-dollarization that is seemingly happening. And most of the FX guys that I talk to, they're like, Europeans are going to come back from vacation and they're going to be like, oh shit, I'm still super over allocated to dollars. And you're going to see a ton of dollar selling pressure.
Interesting. Maybe you'll get the stablecoin bill by then too, and we can.
No, maybe
new distribution lines for dollars.
But again, like, stables are, you have to stay credible, right? And so like,
right, it's still the U.S. dollar.
Yeah, but there's Euro C.
That's what I'm saying, though. Like,
there are going to be other stables, and so
Yeah.
like, you know, people are going to put money to work where they feel like it's safest, and they're by safest I mean you get the most amount of purchasing power protection.
That's right.
Right, and so we still have to fight that battle. And at the end, last I checked, like we're still printing $2.5 trillion deficits.
Yep.
And we're not doing anything about it. And to be honest, like maybe this doesn't actually affect us in the next like 3.5 years. It might not, right? But like chickens will come home to roost. Somebody will have to pay for this, and whether that's, you know, future generations that are going to have to get taxed like crazy, or whether it's corporations that are going to have a super high tax rate, or if it's the consumer that's going to have to deal with hyperinflation, right? Somebody's going to have to pay for that, right? And ultimately, like people need to have the political courage to spend less money, and I don't see that happening. And so I think ultimately, what's going to cause a change in the narrative is the market's going to force it.
Yep.
Right, and you know, the longer we wait in terms of doing anything meaningful, the more painful it gets. Right? It's really that easy, and you're seeing it in the market right now. I mean, just take a look at silver. Right? Silver had a breakout.
Sort of platinum, I saw.
Platinum, palladium,
Yeah.
like fucking these random shit metals. Not shit metals. I don't
But
mind the metals.
non-golds.
Non-golds.
Yeah.
They're breaking out. Like, do you have any idea how much silver there is in the world?
Is it
And
a
like
lot?
how there's a lot,
Yeah.
and you can like mine a lot more silver.
Yeah.
But people are putting serious money behind it because they're like, I want to protect my purchasing power. And you know, I think, yeah, not to go into the doomer scenario that, you know, Ray Dalio has been painting on the tape recently, but there is like more and more like the idea of self-custody, sovereignty over your assets, and just, you know, not necessarily being as linked to the system. I think that theme is going to become more pervasive because, you know, as Novo said it, and, you know, a bunch of other people have said it, like, we're in a bear market in trust.
Yep.
And, you know, equities might be going up, but that could just be because we're in a bear market in trust.
Dollars could be going down too. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's very interesting. We'll see how it plays out. But yeah, like, the market's going up right now, and it probably is going to go a bit higher. But I do think that Bitcoin is kind of well positioned in a lot of scenarios.
There you go. Bimnet Abebe from Galaxy Trading, as always. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's go now to our guest, Peter McCormack, chairman of Real Bedford FC, host of the Pete McCormack Show. Peter, welcome back to Galaxy Brains.
Me, good to see you again.
Yeah, absolutely. Love having you on. Pete, I guess formerly ran the What Bitcoin Did podcast.
Yep.
Now that's in the hands of Danny Knowles, the great Danny Knowles. But how many episodes did you record of WBD?
860.
Where are we at?
860.
Finn, what are we at? Like 180? Closing in on 200. Wow. But
Yeah.
that's still 4x. It feels like I've been doing this forever.
Yeah.
You really did
860.
do it forever.
Yeah, I mean, where are we now? I started in 2017. November the 17th was the first show I recorded with
Wow.
Luke Martin
Yep.
in LA. We did it for 7.5 years and handed the baton to our boy Danny,
Yeah.
who's crushing it.
Yeah,
I
he
love
is.
that guy. I wanted him to have nothing but success. And yeah, just doing something different now.
So now you remain, though, the chair of Real Bedford FC.
Yes.
We've got our scarf here right over your shoulder. We're big supporters and fans of Real Bedford. And I was there for both the men's and the women's got promoted, right?
Dude.
In April.
So we always plan that event around that time of the year because we hope there's a chance that game is the game you win the league.
Yeah.
But for it to actually happen, a lot of things have to fall into place. And it didn't look like it was going to happen again. And then Burko, who should have beaten this team the week before, drew a game we expected them to win. So it just worked out that both the men's and the women would win their leagues on that day if they won their games, and they did. And, you know, we had the Winklevoss flying, obviously you and all the other Bitcoiners come in, and it's one of those things where you're like, this is definitely a simulation, because how can I be that lucky for everything to fall in place like that? So, yeah, the men won their third league in a row. Only the third team in the history of UK football to do that.
Wow.
Nobody's ever done 4.
Wow.
The women went back to back, now in the third tier of women's football, and it's all going to plan.
It really is, and I think I said this on this podcast after I got back from the Cheat Code conference a couple months ago. That really astonishing that, like, I think a lot of us just assumed you were kind of crazy to buy this football club and turn it into a Bitcoin football club. And gosh, anyone who thought you were crazy is. Well, I think they've been proven wrong because it's literally working. It's really working. It's improving Bedford.
Yeah,
it's a great experience to go to the pitch there too.
It's like Lop says, you can just do things.
Yeah.
And I love that saying because you can just do things. And look, it was a crazy idea at the start. I was very bullish. I said, I'm going to buy this team. I'm going to make them the Bitcoin club. They were in the 10th tier of the English pyramid. 9 promotions from the Premier League. And I said I was going to take them to the Premier League. And obviously, everyone thought I was an idiot. I don't think Bitcoin has fully got it to begin with. And then everyone in football was like, you're an idiot. I mean, you're an idiot. What are you on about? You've got 40 fans, you play in a field, and you're going to get in the Premier League. And I was like, yeah, we're going to do it.
Well, and how many times has the men's been promoted?
3. So we won the league every year.
So you're you're going into the 6th tier?
7th tier now.
Going into the 7th tier.
7th tier.
And you named your conference in Bedford, which, by the way, is a great conference.
Thank you.
Cheat Code.
Yes.
We talked about this the last time you were on the show, was it a year ago? Maybe more than a year ago. What is the cheat code?
Well, Bitcoin is the cheat code, but there are more cheat codes.
Yeah.
AI is a cheat code.
Okay, but in the context of Cheat Code Conference and Real Bedford, because you were talking about this last year as how Bitcoin can. Well, I mean, what have you done? You built an international community around a 7th tier English football club.
I think it's more than that. So, and it kind of comes into the reason why I quit doing What Bitcoin Did as a podcast. In that, if we win, when we win, have we already won? I don't know the answer to those questions definitively, but the idea of winning is that you don't need a Bitcoin podcast because Bitcoin is just there.
There's no dollar podcast.
No, exactly. And Schiff's gold podcast seems archaic. So, and so that to me is that's winning. So I didn't want to call it the Bedford Bitcoin Conference because I know it's going to evolve to be more than that. You've been both years. It is a community project about the town I live in. It's about growing Bedford and hopefully creating a template for other places in the UK, maybe around the world, inspire other people. So for me, Cheat Code was a purposely selected name, knowing that eventually it won't just be a conference about Bitcoin. And I think that's bleeds for everything I'm doing. Like the podcast now is we talk about Bitcoin. We have maybe one show a month about it and talk about it to guests. But there's this, I don't know, none of this was really planned, but everything is pointing in this one direction of all the things that I'm trying to do, which is try and make the part of the world I'm in a better place.
Talk to us about Bedford. I know you were when you were last on the show, you were in a spat with the mayor.
Yes.
You're not anymore, but you were talking about taking policing into your own hands in Bedford.
Yes.
What's going on with the town of Bedford?
So the problems with our town are the same problems up and down the country. The town centres have been gutted out, and it's been a long process. It started this goes back maybe a century when something like a Sainsbury's or a John Lewis became a department store. So originally you would go to different stores for different things, and then you got these huge department stores where you can get everything in one place. And then obviously they get the economies of scale, and maybe some of the smaller businesses closed down. And then they became chains that moved into towns. And then from that, you got the supermarkets on the edge of towns that went beyond just doing groceries to, stuff for your home. Maybe you go and buy some apples, but you also get a towel, and you get your mayonnaise, and you also get some plates for your house. You can just get a range of things. Again, essentially a centralizing force. And then you get the edge of town. You call them malls here. We get edge of town shopping centers. Yeah. Drag people out of the town. Then you got the internet. So gradually, the economics of running a small shop in a town's got harder. And up and down the country in the UK, you'll walk down a street, anything like a Bedford High Street, and you'll see shops that have closed down, or you'll just see betting shops, or we've got a lot of Turkish barbers and vape shops, and the shape of the town centre's changed. And because of that, less people are then going into the town centre. Now, add to the economic decline that we've had over the last whatever number of decades. Let's maybe start in 1971, but we've had economic decline, increasing pressures on government to provide social care, and so you've got an increase of issues in town centres, which is addiction issues, crackheads, alcoholics, shoplifting, aggressive begging. And so the shape of town centres is got gradually worse, and Bedford is the same as any other town up and down the country. And so that is a decline I refuse to accept. I refuse to accept the lack of policing. I refuse to accept the council not enforcing what's known as a PSPO order, which is a public space protection order. I refuse to accept that, and I refuse to accept the economic decline. So I am on a mission now to 180 Bedford's trajectory, and part of that is, I wrote a manifesto. There was a 5-point plan. Yeah. Point 1, you've got to make the town safe, so people don't feel scared. They're not stepping over heroin needles and crackheads and being shouted at by crazy people. You've got to deal with that. You've got to beautify the town. So if shops are closed, maybe you can put up beautiful pictures in the windows. You've got to invest in the town centre, and I believe there is a strong pull to localism now. I think we've tried globalism and it didn't really work. I mean, it worked for some people, but it's gutted the towns. The 4th point was you have to have a culture and events calendar. So there's a reason to come into the town. Then lastly, you have to get the town itself on a mission. You've got to get people to come together and say, we want the town to work. So this is my central goal, of which Real Bedford is part of it, of which the podcast is part of it, and the coffee shop's part of it.
The new coffee shop, right downtown.
Right downtown is all part of saying, can we change the trajectory of a town? And if we can that be something that spreads, like whether it's as even a meme or an idea or a political push? Can this spread across the country?
I love it, and I grew up in New England, which also has a lot of small towns, a different history, obviously, but England in particular, and I suppose the UK broadly, but England is a land of small towns that are thousands of years old, many of them, right? I mean, how old is Bedford?
Hundreds of years old,
600 years old, or something
like that. And you see the old pictures, and it's beautiful. And
because Bedford is beautiful, by the way.
Well, that's the funny
It's on
thing.
a beautiful little river, and there's beautiful stone bridges, and it's a beautiful old city center with a church, and it's quite beautiful.
And the thing is I know the bad bits, right? And I know the things that are going wrong. And sometimes I tend to focus on talking about that and forget the good bits. And then, people like you.
We came over and we were like, this is gorgeous.
You, Natalie, Brunel, and Preston Pierce always come. They're like, this place is amazing.
Yeah.
And it is. And it's got so much potential. But I see the trajectory, the decline, the moral, social, economic decline. And I know that needs to be reversed. Now, we're in a fortunate position. Bedford has 2 amazing gifts in its hands. Universal Studios just announced they're opening their first European theme park in Bedford. It's literally 4 minutes from my house.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, if we got in my car, we would drive for 4 minutes and we'd be there. So
it's going to create thousands of jobs.
20,000 jobs.
Wow.
And we're a town of 100,000 people, so we've got that.
Yeah.
We're uniquely positioned in the country in that we're just outside of London, but we're halfway between the 2 main roads that fork the country, the M1 and the A1. And the second gift we have is that our football club has significant investors. We have Cameron Tyler Winklevoss, successful billionaire Bitcoin investors supporting us. So we have these 2 gifts, and they could be part of the reversing the decline of the town.
A real renaissance.
Yeah. But the country needs us. It's funny, you go on these journeys like, I'm going to fix Bedford, and you're like, oh, actually, what we really need to do is fix the UK. The UK is in a terrible shape on a number of different reasons. The economy is screwed. We have a terrible socialist government at the moment, which is carrying on the grift of higher taxes, higher borrowing, which leads to increased inflation, lower jobs. Like everything that you and I, you as a libertarian, me as somebody who flirts with libertarianism, know that fundamentally don't work. And they continue this grift. So that is a problem. We have issues with free speech where people are getting harassed. I mean, I've been talking about my podcast a lot. I've been reading a lot about the Declaration of Independence of the Federalist Papers.
Yeah.
If you look at the grievances that the colonies had with the king, the things they complained about, you can map them to what the electorate in the UK now is feeling about our current government. And when I say our current government, I wrap all of the parties into it because they're all part of this problem. And so I'm rambling here a bit, but basically everything I want to do for Bedford, really, I hope it's something for the country.
I think it needs to be. What is it? Is it the decline of the British Empire? Is it being sort of a second fiddle to the United States now? Do you like? Where does it sort of emanate from? Is it British culture? What's?
I think I mean, like, I don't have the answer. All I can talk about is my lived experience. Is that there's like a shaming that existed of being proud British, and I think a lot of it came from in the 80s football hooliganism. The UK had a massive problem. We were banned from the European tournament.
It was literally that bad? Like, there were genuine gangs?
Well, I mean, like a team, you'd go to a game and both sets of fans would have a scrap. But it got really bad. There was a game where Millwall played at Luton and they ripped up the seats. We had the Heysel disaster, which involved Liverpool fans, where a lot of people died, and we were banned from Europe. English fans are notoriously there's like an image you have of England football fans, which is like bald-headed, tattooed, kind of East London guy with a England flag, and so a lot
like
of
drunk on pints.
Yeah, and so a lot of that patriotism around being English was adopted by a bunch of moron hooligans, and so people didn't want to hang their flag. They didn't want to be proud to be British. Now that's turning around because we've tried multiculturalism. It's worked in some places and utterly failed in others, and people are sick of it. They're sick of a bunch of things at the moment, but we've got the British, and we are a small island who bats out of its league. We have a seat at the UN, which we have, but we wouldn't get if you re-establish the UN today.
You mean on the Security Council?
Yeah, on the Security Council. We're one of the 5 seats. Is it alongside France, Russia, the US, and China?
Yeah,
the 5 seats?
that's right.
I mean, I think there's a strong argument that other countries are probably more deserving than us right now. But our history says we should have a seat there.
Well, and it also was the original nuclear nations, right?
Exactly.
It was like, again, a small country with nuclear submarines. I mean, it's pretty powerful.
But we, I think we've become a laughing stock of the world. I think people like Charlie Kirk came over and he tweeted after, he said, when you get home, Americans, you kiss the ground and be grateful you do not live in the UK. We have a lot of problems.
Yeah.
But you have 2 choices. 3 choices, I think. You ignore it, just put up with it. You do something about it, or you leave.
Yeah.
I hate the idea of leaving. That thought of leaving, I think, is cowardly, and I think you should stay. It's because the people who leave tend to be the ones who've got the money, and it's like, come on, if you've got a bit of money, you can actually have an impact. Just try and force change. And so my choice is to try and force change. And it's funny, you think about Alex, and you think, right, I want to start a podcast. And I start a podcast. It goes, okay, right, this is cool. I'm going to buy a football team. Football team is like winning. We're objectively doing very well. It's like, okay, I want to get involved locally in the economy. Can I do that? I think I can. And then you go, well, can I, as an individual, change a whole country? Yeah. And then you check yourself and go, hold on, is that a bit arrogant? Like, I'm just a local businessman. But then I came to this kind of thought, am I naive for thinking I can do it? Or do I lack courage if I don't do it? And I'm kind of like, I sit and think about those things. I think, well, every strong leader in the world who's ever changed something got up one day and said, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And so I just get up every day and say, I'm going to try and make the UK a better place.
It's very inspiring. And you've got a coffee shop, a football club, a bar, a conference.
A non-profit.
A non-profit, all in Bedford.
Yeah, all in Bedford.
Yeah, very cool. Let's talk a little bit about the Peter McCormack show.
Yes.
What have you been doing on this show? I've seen you've interviewed politicians, academics. You interviewed our mutual favorite, R.A. the Rugged Man.
Yes,
great New York rapper.
Surreal as fuck that
was.
Oh, can I swear?
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
That was, I mean, look, he's the GOAT.
Yeah.
He's like, to me, he's the greatest rapper of all time. Severely undervalued in the world of hip hop. Well, valued by other rappers, but underappreciated by the world of hip hop. And he followed me one day on Twitter. I was like, what is happening here? Then starts messaging me about like Bitcoin and stuff. And so I just messaged and said, do you want to come on the pod? And he did. And it was a surreal experience. But yeah, look, the show, I mean, let's say exactly what it is. Joe Rogan is my Michael Jordan. I've seen what an incredible thing he's done. And people are like, oh, you're just trying to be the UK Rogan. I'm like, yeah, kind of. I kind of am, really. But not in that I'm trying to emulate him.
Yeah.
I'm trying to create what he's created. Whereas, like, Kash Patel was there this week, right?
Yep.
Kash Patel said, you're the only show I'm going to do because this is the place I can come and have an honest conversation and speak to the public, because the mainstream media plays games, they spin.
They edit it.
They lie. You go on Rogan, you got 2 to 3 hours, and the public get to hear straight from the horse's mouth exactly what's going on. I want that in the UK. I want any politician, leader, cultural person, musician, football, anyone who feels they can. This is a place they can come and just say whatever is on their mind, and it's not going to be edited, censored. There's going to be no spin. And so, yeah, so that's what I'm trying to do, and it's going okay. It's going all right.
So you had the largest podcast in Bitcoin, you're a big Bitcoiner, and your football club owns Bitcoin.
Yeah.
What does Bitcoin culture look like to you and the market now that you're sort of on the outside of it a little, looking back in?
It's a really good question. So when you're right in the mix, you see the world very differently from the outside. I'm on the fringes of Bitcoin now, and I get to peer in. And you observe some things. So one thing that I've observed is that I still don't think a lot of Bitcoiners know what the real world is like for people not in Bitcoin. I don't think they fully understand why people haven't got into Bitcoin and why they still ignore Bitcoin. And I've really come to dislike this term Bitcoin fixes things, because Bitcoin doesn't. People fix things. And so getting away from Bitcoin has allowed me to spend a lot of time with people in the real world, see the problems they're facing, and see whether Bitcoin is part of the solution, but what the other solutions are. And so, yeah, that's been an interesting experience, getting out of that and getting back into the real world. I think Bitcoin is an incredible tool for humanity, and I love it. I'm a Bitcoiner for life, but I recognize we've got deep problems in our society, in US society, and that all the problems are downstream of bad politics. I said to you, I flirt with libertarianism. I would like to think I've got a lot of, I kind of am a libertarian in certain ways. Like I want free markets and small government and less interference. But I still don't believe you can have a fully libertarian society, because actually a lot of the freedoms exist because they're defended by a legal system and a constitution like you have here. And so what I believe is what you need is, I'm like, come to the acceptance that politics is a natural monopoly. It's always going to exist. If you could press a red button and eliminate government here in the US, you will then rebuild government, because people have to coordinate, and then you have to have leaders and decisions and rules, and you just recreate government. So my focus is taking ideas that libertarians have and how can you make government better. So, for example, in the UK, what I would like to do is a political coup in Bedford. And it's a very simple, legal political coup, whereby I would establish the independence of Bedford. And we would run somebody in every council seat, I think they say 30 council seats, and they sign up to a mandate that you are independent of any national party, and your only position is what is good for Bedford. And with that, we would establish a non-binding constitution, because we can't make it legal, but this is a constitution of how we will act locally. And when you're sat in a room of other councillors voting, you don't see the red of Labour and the blue of Conservatives and the yellow of Lib Dems. You just see the grey. You just see Bedford, and you make your decisions for Bedford. And so that's something I would really like to do. I'm so deeply entrenched in US history. Also, I'm quite deeply entrenched in, we talked about it at dinner last night, it's like the Swiss model.
Yep.
And it's like, how do you take all those best bits to limit the role of government so it is only there to serve the people? Because right now, government serves government. Government serves its party, its leader, and the institution of government. We are not serving people in any remote form at all.
Yeah.
Like everything. Have you ever read George Washington's exit letter?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what an incredible, insightful piece of writing that was. When he talked about factionalism, he feared factionalism. And I don't know the answer to that at a national level, but absolutely the biggest problem in the world right now, I think, certainly in the UK and in the US, is factionalism.
I think that's right. And I think also, human agency is very possible at the local level, right?
Totally.
It's very hard for any individual or even group of individuals to impact, say, like international policy, right?
Yes.
And I think this is part of you were talking about a move back towards localism and maybe pulling back from globalism. that's one of the positive things about a move like that is that probably 90+% of a person's daily life is local.
Yeah.
The interactions they have are local. To the extent they interact with government or government bureaucrats or agencies, they're local ones most of the day.
Do you want a crazy stat?
Yeah, tell me.
94% of tax receipts in the UK go through Whitehall, which is central government. I think in Switzerland it's 40%.
Wow.
60% goes locally. And so if 94% is going through central government, what can you really do locally?
Well, and this is like decentralization, basically.
Yeah.
It's the idea of federalism in the United States, which is that and states' rights, as we call it, but it is a united group of 50 states. That is what the country is, and so it's meant to be. But the federal government has become more and more powerful over the decades and centuries. I think the original idea was you would have a more diverse country, like jurisdictionally diverse, where good ideas that state X did might be adopted by state Y, like just through it working and it being convincing. And by the way, if a state does a bad idea that ends up failing, they'll probably stop it because people will leave with their feet. They'll move to the next state over. But I love that idea of I have this. It's totally utopian, but like this idea of a beautifully diverse, almost dare I say, European, with many different sort of regions that, of course, are tied together. It was supposed to be taxes, national taxes, federal government powers, national taxes. Military, defend the country, and regulate interstate commerce. So, and that was it. But that commerce clause, as they call it, has been widened to the point where you can drive, semi-trucks through it at this point, right? But I do sort of yearn for a more let the states do different things, right? I tell, let's say one state does something that my mom. I talk with my mom about this, and she's like, "Oh, it's terrible what like this state is doing." And I'm like, "What do you care?" I'm like, "You live in a different state. Like, why don't you focus on your state?" You guys should lead by example, right? Show the world. Yeah. That's sort of my viewpoint. I know it doesn't work for everything, but...
Well, so, I mean, the way I keep thinking about it, look, if the UK trajectory continues on this negative, social, economic, and moral decline, I eventually would have to leave because it'll end up becoming an increasingly unsafe place to be and just not a pleasant place to be. But I can't change things at a national level. I don't have that influence. And maybe the podcast will grow and more people will listen to it, and that can be interesting. But I think I think grassroots movements are important. Bitcoin was a grassroots movement, okay, and it's gone international. I think the way to solve the UK is starting with a grassroots movement. So what can I do? I can influence Bedford. Can I change the trajectory of Bedford? Can we come together as a group of people in the town and do such a good job that people around the country are looking and going, well, I want a bit of that. What's Bedford doing? Why is that right? And because people are so angry and upset with the state of the country at the moment, you then have objective data that you can say, here's how we changed the town. These were the problems. This is how we fixed it. And look, there are deep issues. I mean, 71% of the local council budget goes on social care. 71%. And I did a Freedom of Information Act request and just came through, right? So we house 900 people, and different type of people, vulnerable people.
So in like public housing, basically.
Yeah, but we actually they're put up in certain some are in hotel rooms, certain things, but 900 people. But the budget for that in 2022-23 was 8 million, 7.5 million. 23-24 grew to over 10 million, and then last year was 18 million. So it's more than doubled in 2 years, right? And that's over 10% of the council budget just in that area alone. And we've got, what are we going to do? We can't just spend our entire life spending increasing amounts of government money on social projects. As much as your heart wants to help people, we have to also have a robust, strong economy. And so what can I do locally? And by the way, one of the things I really want to do is radical transparency. Like, I think every government meeting should be public and every email should be public. Mm-hmm. Like Black Mirror. If you know every email you send is going to be public, it's going to change the way you do things. So I'm thinking a lot about this. I'm thinking deeply about this. And it does give me a reflection on Bitcoin, right? In that, look, got a bit lucky, right? I discovered Bitcoin at a certain time. I bought a bunch. And yes, I had to hold and whatever. But like, in the reality is every 4 years, I just get this acceleration of what it's worth.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of luck in that. Whether some Bitcoiners want to admit that or not, there's some luck in that. And so once you get to a certain point, it's like, well, what do you want to do? You want to take that luck and go and live in Dubai? Take that luck, go and live on an island, just look for any tax-free jurisdiction and escape? Or do you want to take that luck and do something with it? And I just wish there were more people in Bitcoin going, okay, we've all spent the last 4, 8, whatever years you've been in Bitcoin moaning about the world. Okay, stand up and fix it. Fight. Go and do something. Change the local politics. Invest in companies. Invest in individuals. I find it so demoralizing when I see a Bitcoiner just fuck off to a tax-free jurisdiction and say, I'm done. I mean, look, each to their own. I just find that miserable.
I think it's really inspiring, your view here and how to save the UK, Pete. Can I ask you, I was trying to look up his name a second ago. There's this influencer, socialist economist type.
Oh, Gary Stevenson.
Yes.
Gary Economics.
Gary Economics. Yes. He doesn't like Bitcoin.
Nope.
He is an avowed socialist.
Yeah.
Right? He's become very popular in the UK.
Yes. I don't trust where he's come from. I'd like to talk to him. I'd love to interview him.
Gary, if you're listening, go on the Peter McCormack show.
I've reached out to him, and he told me to email his guy, and I heard nothing back. Daniel Priestley smoked him in a debate. Yeah, he's a socialist. Yeah, he's a socialist. He chooses to ignore history. As every socialist does, they ignore history, and they debate on emotion. And he's very much like, we should tax the super wealthy, blah, blah, blah. The UK has got the second highest number of millionaires who've left the country, behind China. And he wants a wealth tax, as other people in Labour do. And we just know, objectively speaking, that wealth taxes don't care about your feelings. They scare away the rich and the super rich, who, by the way, I think it's something like the top 1% in the UK pay 30% of the tax, and the top 10% pay 60% of the tax.
It's similar in the U.S.
We need rich people.
Right.
And we should celebrate
Well,
rich
if they
people.
leave, who's going to raise the funds for the government to spend on these programs? It's just counterintuitive.
And so he keeps having these emotional outbursts in these videos, talking about how desperate things are, and that, that we need to tax the rich and, help the poor. But the problem is these socialist governments, we've got a Labour government at the moment. We've just found out that since they've come into power, the amount of people on payroll has decreased by 250,000 people. So more people are unemployed because of them. And they're doing increased borrowing, which is going to drive inflation, which widens the wealth gaps. Everything they think that they should do makes the problem for the people they say they want to help worse. And so he's part of that. He's a moron. His socialist views should be debated, and he should be humiliated. And maybe I should write, but he wrote Gary Economics. I should write more on economics. Just, because people don't want the truth. They shouldn't be reading Gary Economics. They should be reading, economics in one lesson. Yeah. They should be reading Hayek. They should be reading books based on people actually understanding about how the economy works. So yes, he has done very well. He is a moron. He's part of this socialist class, and we should humiliate every argument he has.
I think since we last talked, to change gears here, Pete, you won your lawsuit against Craig Wright, or actually his lawsuit against you, I should say.
Yeah. Well, I technically I lost.
Yes, you did.
Because they said I
Can
libeled
you tell
him.
us what happened? For the audience that doesn't know, just give a high overview of this saga.
Yeah. So, 6 years ago, Calvin Ayre and Craig Wright pursued Hodler, our boy in Bitcoin.
Yep.
And so I called them out on Twitter.
For calling Craig Wright a fraud.
Yes, calling Craig Wright a fraud. So
yes. Craig Wright, by the way, of course, I assume our audience knows, but the man who claims to have been Satoshi.
Yeah,
widely
Satoshi.
debunked,
Yeah,
but yes.
And so I called them out, and I said, sue me. I don't give a fuck. Called, I insulted them and repeated the allegations and yada yada. And then they did sue me, and I wasn't actually prepared for what libel's like in the UK, we have terrible libel laws. I spent 6 years in litigation, millions of pounds. At one point, I was certainly going to lose, and that loss would have been the destruction of everything I built in my life. So it would have been a step-by-step process. I would have been due to pay his legal fees, which were 4 to 5 million. Then I have my legal fees, 1.5 million. My net wealth is lower than that. And so what they would have done is force sold all my assets, my podcast, my football club, everything, and Craig Wright would have been given the money. I would have been then bankrupted. I would have kept my house for a year because I have children, and then in a year my house would have been sold, and I would have been on the street. It was facing a terrible situation. And then this random account on Twitter, which is a real doll, which if people don't know, they're basically kind of lifelike sex dolls with giant bosoms.
You're saying this is the avatar?
This is the avatar for the account. Is constantly posting pictures of like the Bitcoin logo in the cleavage and charts. But this account hates Craig Wright, right? Anyways, they'd been messaging me, and I'd been ignoring it, like whatever. And they sent me a message. And when you do a claim for libel, you have to prove harm. It's not like I could say
It
you're.
can't just be you said something mean to me and I'm
Yeah.
offended.
Yeah.
It has to have harmed me financially.
Yeah, financially,
Reputationally, yeah.
And so Craig put in these 3 claims, and one of them is that he was disinvited from 10 conferences because of my tweets. So this meme account messaged me and said, it's like something from a film. Go and check this. It said like, go and check the conferences. And I kind of ignored it. And then I got to this point where I thought I was going to lose the case.
Back against the wall.
Yeah, back against the wall. I made Craig write an offer. I offered him £230,000, which is all the money I had.
To just go away.
Yeah, to walk away. He declined the offer. And so I went back to this account and I saw about these conferences. So I contacted the people who ran the conferences. So I phoned up one, eventually spoke to the guy on the phone. I just said, look, was it true this guy was disinvited from the conference because of a tweet I put out? He said, well, look, we have a system that records all applications for speaking at conferences. Let me go and check. He went and checked. He said, no, he was disinvited because the quality of his submission was poor because it goes through a judging panel.
Yeah.
So I ended up going around. Eventually, he spoke to 3 of the conference people, and he was disinvited for a number of reasons. Well, he wasn't disinvited. He was never invited in the first place. He was rejected because his submissions, his papers were poor or plagiarized.
Right.
Amazingly.
Right.
And so the whole process of a lawsuit like this is trying not to get to the final. You're trying to end it before you get to the final judgment by, it's like a game.
Yeah.
Back and forth. And so we have to submit to the courts that his statement, which is signed as a witness of truth, was false. That he wasn't disinvited. He then has to admit he's lied. And what UK judges hate is liars. They hate lying.
I think everybody.
They want truth the whole way. So at that point, his credibility's done. And so what we did is we knew I was going to lose technically. We applied for something called a £1 judgment because he'd lied to the courts and wasted our time. And we got that. I took the kids on holiday, and it was a very, very stressful time. I mean, Danny knows what I went through. I mean, it was bad. And I was in Hawaii, and I got a phone call from my lawyer, and he said, yeah, we got the £1 judgment. And when you get a £1 judgment, you're considered technically the winner. So technically I libeled him, but I'm technically the winner because of the £1 judgment. And then because of that, we applied to have him pay my fees, and we got 85% of the money back. And yeah, it was a real
But you did
relief.
have to hand over £1, technically?
No, I did. I did. I had to transfer £1 into his lawyer's accounts. It's mad. Those things happen. But
Yeah.
the weird thing is like I feel this weird connection to him because I spent 6 years thinking about him, and I assume I'm in his head, or I was in his head as well. And I really want to sit down with him and do an interview.
Yeah.
I want to talk to him. I just want to.
Well, and then he had also sued Hodlanat
Yeah.
in Sweden and in the UK, I
Yes.
think.
And then Copa sued him.
And then COPA, the Crypto Open Patent Alliance, an open patent alliance
Yeah.
that tries to buy patents and then open source them, I think is the core of the thing. They affirmatively sued Craig Wright in the UK.
Yeah.
And did Hodlanat win his case in the UK, or was it a similar type of judgment?
I don't know what happened to the final judgments on his, but he certainly lost at certain stages.
Yeah.
And like he went.
He also went through hell.
Yeah. I mean, it is.
It's like a normal guy. They also doxed him.
Yeah, dude.
like-
I don't think people understand how horrific being chased through the courts and someone trying to bankrupt you through the courts is, because their strategy was to run the costs up so high that you give up.
Yeah.
And when someone's coming after you like that, is truly horrific. I mean, you're sat there thinking, I'm going to lose everything. I'm going to be bankrupt. My kids are going to be, pull my kids out of school. It's horrific.
Yeah.
And I don't think the punishment for what they did is high enough,
I don't either.
because you are fraudulently, happily destroying someone's life on a lie.
Yeah.
Purely on a lie. And so I'm fascinated by him. What I want to know is, does he go home at night and think, fucking hell, am I getting away with this? Or does he go, is he that crazy? He's convinced himself he actually is.
I wonder that.
I actually have a thesis on this. So we had a guy start doing some investigation work into him. And this guy was incredible. He used to find the most unbelievable information out, like stuff you just didn't know would exist. His thesis was Craig actually was there very early on in Bitcoin. He was around it because he was on the cypherpunk mailing list, and he thinks there is a potential that he was connected early with Satoshi. That's what his thesis was. Because I was thinking, when you come out and make this claim, it's quite a bold claim, and you're doing it knowing there could be somebody out there who comes and...
This is what he said. He said, well, if I'm not Satoshi, then surely Satoshi will appear and sue me back or whatever.
And look, Satoshi, whoever Satoshi is, dead or alive, has, while sat on an amazing fortune, made a very strong, noble decision to back away from the project. And I think even if Satoshi is watched this case, probably did so in the faith that Craig Wright would be debunked, and didn't do that. But still, it's quite a bold thing. So, is it that Craig did know Satoshi and knew why?
So he knew that he was dead, for example,
or
right?
or that it's a hugely flawed character,
Right.
that has its own personal demons. I just don't know. I'm fascinated by it all.
Because that was the sort of allegation he was making in that Kleiman litigation in Florida, was that he and Ira Kleiman together were Satoshi or something.
Yeah.
And then Ira died, and so he was the only Satoshi left or something like that.
Yeah, so the guy who did the investigation for us came to us with a thesis on who he thought it was. And I'm not going to say.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even say off camera. I think we all should hold that policy central to us as a Bitcoiner.
Yeah.
And he found this blog this character had written, and it was fascinating. It kind of felt like you were potentially seeing into the mind of Satoshi.
Like early prior to Bitcoin?
No, more post Bitcoin.
Oh, interesting.
Some kind of ropey, quite libertarian views, which I couldn't agree with, which I will tell you about separately. But anyway, he ended up writing to them and saying to them, look, this legal case is going on. I think you're Satoshi. Can you do this? The next day, that person's entire digital history was erased. Just gone.
Interesting.
Yeah, it fascinated me. And based on what that person, because that person was writing loosely about Bitcoin, but also writing this other weird libertarian stuff, I don't think this person wanted to be in the public eye. So what if Craig knew that person, connected to that person?
Knew that they wouldn't come forward.
Yeah, knew that they wouldn't come forward.
Yeah.
So I'm fascinated. My first question, I would want to ask him, like, the game's up. What's your position now? And
Yeah. What do you?
why-
I mean, well, because he lost Copa won their case, like resoundingly.
Yeah.
And he has financial judgments against him from that case. Craig does.
Yeah.
I don't know what money Craig has. I always have assumed that he doesn't really have that much money, and that it was Calvin. He had financial backers.
Yeah.
But Copa won the case, and the court has basically definitively said that he's not Satoshi. Craig is not Satoshi now, and that he can't say he's Satoshi. Right? He's like prohibited from claiming it.
It's the ironic thing. It's like
it actually ruined him. This whole thing ruined Craig.
he's the only person in the world who definitively is definitely not
Right.
and legally.
He can't claim it. I can claim it right now. I'm Satoshi.
I'm also interested by Calvin,
Right.
because I want to know what I think Calvin believed he was Satoshi. I mean, I remember when I interviewed Roger Ver very early on in Tokyo, and he believed Craig was Satoshi, and he said to me, he's got the private keys. He's like, he believed he was, and I think Calvin fully believed that. There are a lot of people who believe he's Satoshi. There are people in Bitcoin who at the time believed he was.
Right. Gavin believed. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wonder at what point Calvin's like, oh, fuck, you're not.
Yeah.
Like, did he convince himself to the very...
I mean, you can't watch some of that Copa trial and really, literally every single claim that Craig made. I mean, they went scorched earth on every possible claim that he had made, and I mean, pretty definitively disproved every single one. Certainly on balance, you're like, there's no chance.
There's no chance.
But I mean, many of them just outright fully debunked, like just completely made up, proved that it was, got him on the stand and basically forced him to either admit or like very obviously have made it up. Like, I mean, it was a wholesale takedown of Craig, a successful one.
I think he needs to come out and do a public apology.
I mean, otherwise, what's he going to do? Be this weirdo that
Well, I assume
they still got some BSV people probably who think he's Satoshi?
Yeah, but I think he'll probably end up like a pastor somewhere. I just assume he's like...
Or like a farmer.
I don't know if you've seen on Twitter, he's like working out a lot. He's got himself in...
What is it? He's got the weird name, Tomaningo or some... I don't remember what it is.
But he might be a lifetime grifter, but he's like working out, he's getting into shape and clearing his head.
Get your life together.
Get your shit together. And
you owe a lot of money to the court.
A lot of people. But I got Calvin's number at one point.
Yeah?
Yeah, someone gave me Calvin's number. I called him. He didn't
get
answer.
him on at one time.
No, I've never interviewed him, but I used to text him. He never replied once, and I just used to text things like, I forgive you.
Well, I used to reply. He blocked me on Twitter once because like he would say these ridiculous things. And I would be like, are you okay, Calvin? I'd be like, Calvin, seek help. I used to reply to everything and be like, please seek medical assistance, Calvin.
Try and imagine.
Go see a psychiatrist, sir.
Well, try and imagine how much money Craig has lost him. I mean, the lawsuits, if they spent 4 million on mine, 5 million on mine, how much did they spend on Whole or Not? How much on Copa? So you're talking in tens of millions on lawsuits. Low 20, high 30, right? Okay, so there's that. Then there's the payment of the judgments. But also, did Calvin make money on BSV? What was the opportunity cost of BSV?
He was running a big BSV miner, Tal, right?
Yeah,
I think,
but that could have been a Bitcoin miner.
Yes, it could have been. And he probably had a lot of Bitcoin at some point.
How much has Craig cost him? I'm assuming tens of millions up to 100 million.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild.
Yeah.
You try not to make that mistake, you know?
And I think it would be good if Calvin... I think the right thing for Calvin to do is come out, apologize, and make... Calvin's a very wealthy man. He could make people whole. Like, I got 85% of my money back. He could just... Like, if he came and made that 15% whole, that would be a good thing. It's not a lot.
It was somewhere right before the Copa trial, their company, Enchain, right? Was one of their, like, the president of Enchain, like, recanted and was like, actually, you know what, I have to quit.
Christian Ager Hansen.
Yes, Ager Hansen, yes. And actually, I have to resign because this entire thing is a fraud.
He got fucked as well, though, because I think he ended up in jail because he broke his non-disclosure agreement by doing that. So by exposing the fraud, he went to jail. Can you imagine?
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
What a sordid affair. I'm happy it's over. I'm happy you are well past it.
Yeah. I don't... Do I have regrets? I don't want another libel lawsuit in my life.
Libel laws in the UK are notoriously favorable to the accuser, right? So like in the US, I mean, we have the First Amendment.
Yeah.
You can pretty much say whatever you want.
Yeah.
You have to, I'm not an expert in libel in the US. It exists in the US, but the burden of proof is much more heavily on the person claiming they were libeled.
Well, you have SLAP laws as well, strategic litigation against people of public interest.
Right.
I think. And so you have those, so it's very hard to go and sue a podcaster for
saying something
mean.
Yeah.
Especially when it's clearly strategic. My lawyer is working very hard with a group of people to try and have SLAP laws in the UK, and they're coming. So what happened to me shouldn't happen again. But like fundamentally, we just don't have free speech in the UK, and anyone who claims we do is a moron. We don't. We need it. We desperately need it.
I mean, they're arresting people for saying mean. I saw a social media video. I mean, you know, a little grain of sand here, but of a random normal person that gave a bad review on a restaurant having the police show up at their door.
Really?
Saying that it caused somebody distress.
Well, the famous one that everyone's talking about is a girl called Lucy Connolly. Like, her tweets are terrible. She basically said, for all I care, something like this, go and burn down the hotels with the migrants in it, right?
Okay.
It's an abhorrent,
abhorrent statements.
And it gets to that kind of like fine line, is that incitement to violence? Because you don't have absolute free speech in the US. The incitement to violence exists.
True, but there are also some prongs to it. Like, I can go down to the city square right now and say, everyone go get your guns and let's raid City Hall. If there's no plausible likelihood that would ever happen, it wouldn't be inside. It has to actually possibly incite violence. It can't just be like it's incendiary language.
So, for example, I think if there's a scenario where you say, go and kill so-and-so, this is their address.
Yes.
They're home at this time.
Correct.
That is incitement to violence. We can all agree on that. I think her tweet is abhorrent, but I think if someone sets fire to a hotel because they've read their tweet, That's a problem with that person.
Yeah.
And look, if you do want to prosecute on this, okay, fine. Give her a community order. Make her clean some fucking graffiti. Clear some shit off the streets.
Don't clean up Bedford.
Don't send her to jail for 3 years when she's got a young child. What benefit is that to society? None. You know, shame her for an abhorrent tweet and punish her with a community order. But jailing people for that, I mean, thousands. I think Constantine put out something like 4,000 people have been investigated for tweets. I mean, we have a prisons are full. We're releasing people early from sentences because our prisons are full, and yet we're throwing people in there for tweets. It is a disgrace. We need free speech. We don't have a culture of freedom in the
Wasn't
UK.
the some UK minister was saying that they would extradite Americans for similarly incendiary language on social, trying to claim some crazy. And then there's the EU Commission guy who's also saying, you know, put Elon in jail for his tweets or whatever. It's like, guys, that's not going to work, by the way. Just separate from the fact that I philosophically don't believe in it, it's just not going to work.
No. Look, we don't have a strong culture of freedom in the UK. We have a strong culture of government.
Yeah.
We do, and we're subservient to government. We don't have this, because our history is, our history is downstream from being a monarchy, right? And then we established government, and we took the power away from the monarch. But you fought a war for freedom, and so you have a culture of liberty. It's enshrined in your
it is.
Every historical paper in the US, and you discuss freedom, and you vote based on freedom, and you
with liberty and justice for all. We believe in rule of law, but we also believe in liberty. It's the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution.
And it was the Declaration of Independence was life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
That's right.
Like, you have that culture of freedom. I think there are people on the left who have less of that culture of freedom. That they're more like the Europeans.
Sure.
But we don't have that, and we need to establish that. We need to teach people why freedom is important. We need to teach people why free speech is important. Like meme words.
Remember, sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt me. That was.
You say words, we say names, but
there you go.
We don't have a culture of freedom. I don't think people really understand what liberty is in the UK. Like, not enough people, not everyone.
Some
not
people,
not enough people. We're still playing this stupid game of, these politicians are terrible, I'll vote for another one, and yet the trajectory gets worse and worse, as it has for decades. I think we need to establish this culture of freedom, why it's important, why we need it, and why we need to we probably need some kind of constitution in the UK, and we need to enshrine the freedoms in that and teach it. I mean, I think a lot about, I was talking to my son on the way, kind of in the car, and I was saying about, I've got a really different view on education right now. One, because everything's changing because of AI, blah, blah, blah. But also, I don't think we teach the right things. I think we should teach a lot more history and a lot more philosophy, because if you teach history and philosophy, you can teach the mistakes of the past. You can help people understand the mistakes of the past. And if we don't teach that, then people just live in the present and making short-term decisions. There's enough historical documents out there to explain what happens when you take freedom away from people, when you increase the size of government, when you try socialism. Like, these have failed over and over again in history. We should teach that. We should have kids understand why freedom and liberty is important.
I really agree with that, and I think humans are very historically myopic, right? It's hard. Everybody thinks that, the status quo is right, that surely everything must have been thought of already. There's no change that is needed. That if you think about the entire, taking back to Bitcoin for a second, like the entirety of the current global leadership of the world, it basically came of age after the end of the gold standard. They think that, oh my gosh, surely the gold standard or some kind of hard money standard or just dollar dominance, is an improvement from, surely it must be, from what came before. History is a lot longer than 70 years, a lot longer, right? So you take the Romans, they went through this thing multiple times, fully debased their currency, then rebased it, realized that ruined the country, rebased it, then debased it again. They went through this whole long history. I think people tend to think also that the people in the past that you read about in history books are some kind of special people, that they weren't just normal people at the time. That modernity to them was somehow a lot different than modernity to us. But I think it's really just the same people.
Dude.
I mean, you got better gadgets, but mostly the same human problems, the same human ideas, like recycled, revolutioned over and over again.
Listen,
So it's very important to know history.
when the forefathers wrote the Constitution, and I can't. Who were the guys who did the Federalist Papers? Was it?
Madison, Hamilton,
and then the other guy.
John Jay.
Yeah, John Jay.
Yeah.
So they had a lot of foresight. These
Yeah.
people were smart. They were clever. They had integrity and backbone. A lot of what they did, but they thought deeply about what kind of republic they wanted to build, right? And in doing so, they kind of make sacrifices to themselves. Like George Washington turned down being king, right?
Yeah.
He didn't want to be king. He
Right.
didn't want the U.S. to be a monarchy.
He abdicated power,
Yeah, he
which almost
abdicated
never
power.
happens in the
Never
history of the world.
Yeah,
Legend.
And then you look at the state of the world. I mean, look, you look at the state of the U.S. You teach that history. I mean, I always remember it, Kindergarten Cop,
Yeah.
where they have the bit with the forefathers. The kids cover
Yeah.
4 or whatever it is, and you're so proud of this history, yet none of your political leaders at the moment reflect the integrity and thoughtfulness of those people. Not one of them. I cannot. Maybe Ron Paul is about as close you get, and Rand Paul a
Dr.
little
Ron.
bit. But like generally speaking, none of them reflect that. But the strength of your constitution and the strength of what it is has managed to maintain this republic. It's fraying at the edges. But I tell you a really interesting exercise to go through. Feed the constitution into ChatGPT and say, if the forefathers were alive today, based on what we now know about money, economics, technology, how could the Constitution be rewritten? And I've gone through the exercise, and it fully attacks the idea of CBDC, central banks, government debt, and budgets.
So it says we should put those prohibitions on those things into the Constitution? Is that what you're saying?
Basically, yes, a prohibition against CBDCs,
Yeah.
and I think it's a prohibition against central banks, and rules around like debt and surpluses. But anyone in any scenario running a country is almost certainly going to spend more than they have, and they're gonna print. It's the history of every country in the world.
Yeah.
Okay, so we know that's a problem. You know, I know, every single person knows that's a problem. So we need to establish rules to not allow that to happen.
Right.
You know,
That would be the true level up. Like
Yeah.
otherwise we're just redoing it over and over again.
yeah, just establish rules in place that unless there's a disaster, that no new currency can be issued, and in that disaster scenario, perhaps it can only be done through bonds, a bond issue. So look, if it's war, if they used to do war bonds, they got rid of them because the public didn't want to pay for war.
Right.
And so does the public
So now
want to
they
pay
use
for
debt to pay. Now they use fiscal debt.
Yeah. So, but
Yeah.
does, like, if there's a tsunami in Japan, they maybe are probably going to vote for, a print to help.
Sure.
That's a fair thought.
Societal decision.
If a tornado rips through somewhere in Central America, maybe that's a scenario. Maybe the floods in New Orleans. That's
Right.
a certain scenario. Disaster scenarios. Apart from that, you have to run a balanced budget.
Right.
That's it. And why not establish the rule that if you're going to break the budget, then it forces an election? Like, these are the things we should be these sound sensible to me. It's like, why are we not discussing this? Instead, what we're doing is allow every single fucking government in the world to print us into poverty.
Yeah.
And I just don't know why I don't know why it's been accepted.
One last question, Pete. I love it. No, this is great, dude. One last question before we wrap.
Yes.
Real Bedford FC owns Bitcoin
Yes.
on its balance sheet.
Yes.
You have for a while.
Mm-hmm.
You're a Bitcoin business, football club.
Yeah.
Would you consider a Bitcoin treasury strategy, Bitcoin treasury company strategy? Obviously, they're proliferating now.
Yeah. Well, look,
Are you considering, I should say?
who isn't? I mean, everyone should consider it, firstly. Everyone should consider it. Yeah, it's my fiduciary duty as a chairman to consider it. I don't know enough about it. Obviously, I've seen what Michael says on with MicroStrategy, and I'm fully aware there's a handful more what's happened with MetaPlanet.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you avoid doing it with debt, if you do it with equity, it's fine because you can ride out any storm, as a choice. And so I think they're sensible. It's a sensible way of getting rid of shitty pounds and getting more Bitcoin into your business. So I would consider it. I haven't decided if personally, I think it's ethically a good thing to do. Because I then go to my question. If I was to sit down with Michael Saylor, my first question to him is, "What's your end game here? Yeah, what are you trying to do? What's the end game? Does all that Bitcoin just sit there forever as a pot and never get used for anything? And then what does that actually mean? What do these mechanisms to make Bitcoin even more scarce? What does that actually mean? And what are we doing with that?" And I haven't come to a conclusion on that. I don't think I'm against it, and therefore, if that is an exercise for raising capital to drive Real Bedford forward, you definitely should think about it. But I'm just questioning what it actually means. Like the mempool's empty, right?
Yeah.
The mempool's empty. There has been this shift away from using Bitcoin as money, which Michael Saylor's talked about, and I disagree with him on. And that's but then Bitcoin is like this organic beast. Is this just a phase? Like we had a phase where there was the block size wars where we figured that out. Now we're in this kind of institutionalized phase. Is this just a phase or is this permanent? And this is where I think a little bit more about the culture of Bitcoin. So having stepped away, I've also noticed a bunch of people have kind of stepped away. The Bitcoin crowd in Austin seems smaller. The Bitcoin crowd in Nashville seems just a little bit smaller, although Rod's doing amazing work down there. I actually think the Bitcoin crowd in New York's come back, which I really like. I mean, big shout out to our boy Thomas.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's done an incredible job. We have a strong alignment because I think we're building proper Bitcoin businesses in that they are hybrid fiat Bitcoin businesses.
They're real businesses.
They're real businesses where if you take the Bitcoin away, they still work. But if you put the Bitcoin in, it acts as an accelerant, and it means Bitcoin is just a natural part of everything you do. Like you can go into PubKey, have a pint of smash burger, and know nothing about Bitcoin, and you can go in there and you can learn about Bitcoin. I think I love Thomas and love what he's done. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if Bitcoin treasuries are culturally a good idea for Bitcoin.
Because they're not doing anything.
No,
is their idea, right? They're just hoarding coins.
And I haven't come to a firm position on that. But it does make me think again, like this wider thing is that I got into Bitcoin in 2013, fucking around on the Silk Road. I think of the different classes. You have we talked about this last night, the 2009 class, which was your Eric Voorhees and your like Gavin, who you mentioned earlier. There's like that early crowd, and they kind of all went off and did their own things, and some launched shitcoins and did other projects. And then in 2013, you had like a new crowd in, which feels kind of like the Jimmy Song era.
Yeah, and like even Trace. I don't know if he was there earlier, but like it was more of a monetary. Because Ron Paul ran for president in 2008 and 2012, and so there's a big movement in 2012, which later became the Tea Party movement, and the Republican Party sort of co-opted Ron Paul's movement.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of people. This is when I first found out about Bitcoin. It was like 12, 13, and it was really kind of because of. It was actually. Have I told you this? It was because of I was a big supporter of Ron Paul. I had been in college as well, so I'd learned about these sort of scarce monetary good concepts, and there were a lot of people who I think were influenced by that, and then found Bitcoin. But also, I saw during the Euromaidan protest people holding up the QR code saying, in Ukraine, saying donate Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And I was like, literally, what is Bitcoin? What is that? I was like, and I later found out that was Gladstein. That was like one of the first things he did at HRF was help the pro-democracy protesters in Ukraine
my boy
accept Bitcoin, who's now a good friend. He's been on our podcast.
Yeah, I love Alex. So 2009 was really the era of the cypherpunks, right?
Yes.
And then 2013 was kind of the libertarians.
That's what it feels like to me, maybe, if we had to pick one,
And then 2017 kind of felt like when the kind of economists started to come in. And then 2021 felt a little bit more like the philosophical.
Yeah, and like the pleb philosophy too. It was like everyone's locked up at home. But this is when I say like TFTC, like those guys blew up in like COVID lockdown era.
Yeah.
Like that's when I really started listening to Marty and Matt like on a regular basis.
Well, if you think of those eras, you think of the characters. Like these are strong personalities, like Jimmy Song, your Giacomos, Saifedeans.
Yeah.
2017, like whoever came there.
Right, Saifedin released the Bitcoin Standard, I think, in 2017.
So 2017 was Saifedin, and various other personalities came through.
Yeah.
2021 was more like your Lynn Aldens, and Preston started to get bigger. But you had these eras. I look at 2025, and I'm like, who is it? I mean, it's still the era of Michael Saylor. Michael Saylor's dominating it, right?
Yeah. And David Bailey.
I mean, I love David.
I know.
He's done I don't agree with everything he does. I think he's
built a
crazy.
massive thing. One of the things I like the most about what they've done with the Bitcoin conference and
Yeah.
BTC, they've created a huge tent for Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, in Vegas, it was politicians, open source devs, cypherpunks, business people.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw suits, you saw flannel shirts, and you saw black T-shirts. A lot of them.
But if you go back, you think Saylor came around in 21.
Right. That's what I mean. It's not.
But who? I can't think of a big new name that's come around in 2025. I just cannot think. There was that Fred Krueger appeared at one point.
Yep.
He seems a bit of a moron. And apart from that, I can't. There hasn't been a new wave, and I think the reason being is that we might have made it in some ways. Like if you think about it, Bitcoin is fully accepted as a asset class now, certainly here in the US, and it's changing in the UK. We've just got the crypto bill from reform, and we've had a loosening or discussion loosening.
They're going to allow crypto ETFs now.
ETNs.
But
I don't know the difference. But
I'm not sure either, but they are going to be able to. You're going to be able to buy Bitcoin vehicles in a brokerage account,
yeah, so I wonder
which have been prohibited.
So I wonder if we kind of made it. And look, Bitcoin isn't everywhere, and it isn't the standard for the world. But I wonder if we've got past those difficult phases, because it could have been shut down.
Oh yeah.
Now it can't be. And so I wonder if and because I think most purchasers of Bitcoin now, this is just my guess, I have no objective data, is buying it as part of a financial product. Like they own it sometimes without owning it. They own part of MicroStrategy or they own an ETF, and they don't care to learn about it too much. And I wonder if, we're getting into that phase where we don't need a Bitcoin podcast. Not yet, but we're approaching that phase. And if we are approaching that phase, then, well, where is the defense for Bitcoin? For when things get a little bit crazy, people have some crazy ideas like privatizing core or op return arguments, all the shit that's going on. Where's the defense? Where are the strong characters? And I think we're losing that, and that might not be, that's probably a bad thing. And so going back to your point of would we consider a Bitcoin treasury? Definitely would consider it. We might do it. If it turned out to be a good idea, certainly would do it. But I'd like to do it in a way where it has purpose and meaning, not just hoarding Bitcoin to make fiat returns. Does that make sense?
It does.
That's a long rambling answer to a short question.
It does. Well, you have a real business under there, and it's a successful one. Like I said, the Real Bedford men's and ladies, both very successful.
Big up Galaxy for sponsoring the ladies.
We're very proud to sponsor. And Pete, I mean, this has been a great interview, man. Thank you so much for coming back.
Whatever you want, buddy.
And until next time, Peter McCormack, chairman of Real Bedford FC. And I don't know, maybe one day the new king of Bedford and the Renaissance.
We'll see. Thanks. I appreciate this, man.
Yes, thanks, Pete. That's it for this week's episode of Galaxy Brains. Thank you to our guest, Peter McCormack, chair of Real Bedford FC, and our friend Bimnet Abebe from Galaxy Trading. Everyone have a safe and happy weekend, and we will see you next week. Thanks for listening to Galaxy Brains, the weekly podcast from Galaxy Research. If you enjoy the show, please like, rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. To follow Galaxy Research, sign up for our weekly newsletter at gdr.email, read our content at galaxy.com/research, and follow us on Twitter at GLXY Research. See you next week.